Greetings, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all here today. This is Dr. Roshali from the medical team of USV, and a very warm welcome to all the delegates for this session on Future Plus with the topic ChatGPT in medicine. So, whether you are a seasoned healthcare provider, a curious student, or simply someone interested in the advancement of medical science, ChatGPT is here to engage in enlighten you on a myriad of medical topics. ChatGPT has become a go-to resource for medical insights, from the latest breakthrough to the timeless principles of healthcare. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the fascinating world of medicine with ChatGPT. Without further ado, let's dive in. With this, I would like to invite our course mentor for today, Dr. Unnikrishnan sir. Although he needing no introduction, Dr. A.G. Unnikrishnan sir is an endocrinologist and CEO of Chelaram Diabetes Institute, Pune, a leading diabetes institute in India and an International Diabetes Federation certified center for education and excellence in diabetes care. He also heads the newly formed Chelaram Diabetes Research Center. He has published the largest multi-center study of the subjects with pancreatitis and pancreatic diabetes worldwide, in addition to his more than 200 indexed publications. He has numerous other accolades to his credit, naming a few. He has received the Jacob Memorial Prize for the Best Patient Care. He has also been the recipient for the DTech Award for Excellence in Diabetes and Technology in May 2022 and VC Maturoi Oration. Sir has edited various journals, and he has been the editor-in-chief of the Journals of Chronicles of Diabetes in Research and Practice. It is great to have you here with us today, and I welcome you on behalf of Team USP. And with this, I would like to hand over the session for the further proceedings.
Thank you, Dr. Ashley. And this is the Future Plus program, a very successful program. We have lots of doctors attending it every time. We started it at the time of COVID, and the program has just taken off, and it's very successful because this is very, very practice-oriented program. It's not a CME. It's about what doctors need in their own clinical practice. So we have had 2 seasons, and the first season looked at direct tools to improve practice. Second season looked at advanced tools like collaboration, research, networking. The third season looked at technology, financial tips for doctors, social media influencers, things like that. And season 4, which we are currently in, is we've covered the art of public speaking. We've covered pseudoscience in the digital age. And today, of course, we have a very interesting topic, ChatGPT in medicine. And let me introduce 3 splendid experts for today who are excellent, well-known, national, international level people. First is Dr. Gagan Priya. She's a consultant endocrinologist at the Fortis Mohali and Hale Clinics, Mohali. She's executive committee member of the Endocrine Society of India, has won a series of awards, including the MMS Ahuja Award of the AIMS and several IJM awards, has edited several books, a lot of publications, and has founded FLAME, or the Forum for Leaders in Medicine, Forum for Ladies in Medicine. And second is Dr. Lakshmi Nalini Kopale, a senior endocrinologist working in the Shadar Institute of Medical Sciences, Himagiri Hospitals and Apollo Clinics, Hyderabad, Telangana. Very accomplished academic career. She has got awards during her MD, received the President's Award from the Endocrine Society of India, has been an ethics committee member of the institution where she works with publications, very avid sports person herself, and also an interest in sports endocrinology. And may I add, both Dr. Gagan and Dr. Nalini, extremely well-read, erudite, academic. And to complement them, we have another fantastic speaker who is Dr. Nitin Kapoor from the very department where I took my first steps in endocrinology. So this is Dr. Nitin Kapoor, again, a renowned academic figure in the country and abroad. He's a professor and head of the Unit 1 Department of Endocrinology at CMC Vellore. And he has done his PhD also. He has been conferred with several awards, including the AR State Award, the Young Investigator Award, the Tamil Nadu MGR University Gold Medal, has more than 300 PubMed Index publications, an executive committee member of the Governing Council of Endocrine Society of India, very avid researcher in the field of obesity, is also has published several books, and all three of them excellent speakers, very erudite. And with that, for the audience, we have a question. So here's the question for the audience. The poll question is, do you regularly use Chat GPT in your routine clinical practice? Let's see how many of the audience will say yes and how many will say no. And while we are waiting, let me put forth a question to Dr. We have one more poll question, I'm sorry. Do you believe that Chat GPT, AI like Chat GPT, can improve patient outcomes? So let's see the answers to those two questions. And while we are waiting for the answers, let me ask Dr. Gagan Priya, in your experience, how has Chat GPT helped to be updated and to be evidence-based in your practice, and your views on Chat GPT?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Krishnan sir. So I think I may not be the right person for this question, because I only created a login into ChatGPT about a month ago, when I was approached that, this will be an interesting topic to talk about. But my experience with artificial intelligence has been there for a while. I've seen my nephew design a fundus camera and train it to capture images and then use AI algorithms to be able to diagnose different stages of glaucoma or retinopathy. And in fact, he won an international award for that in grade 11. So yeah, artificial intelligence does have a very significant scope in terms of revolutionizing our knowledge, our access to knowledge in healthcare. What ChatGPT does is it uses a deep learning technique. So it's just like any other AI algorithm, and it can produce responses to language input. So it can interpret whatever text data is there available online. So it's a very interesting and promising concept, because what I feel, and in the last 1 month, what I've found it was doing for me is, outside my area of expertise, I was able to learn everything. Like if I wanted to have a summary information on one particular disease, maybe related to kidney, or I was stuck up somewhere with a dose of a particular drug, I was able to extrapolate that, get that information at the tip of a finger. Like it took a mere couple of seconds to get that. Clearing of doubts outside the preview of my specialty was good. Let's say, as an example, I asked it, where can I get a genetic test for Modi in India? So it quickly came up with all of the possible list of labs which are offering that test. So yes, it's very interesting and promising. But as far as this question is concerned, staying updated about medical research and about evidence-based practice, there are at present a lot of limitations. Because one, we have to understand, ChatGPT is, the last data update has been January 22. So it's not been updated after that. It cannot access real-time internet. And the third important limitation is that it does not have access to the medical databases that you and I routinely use. So it cannot access journals, it cannot access PubMed or other search engines. So I think with that regard, particularly medical research, it can summarize a lot of data that's available free or to which it was trained, but it does not have access to the actual hard data. And I was just experimenting with it. So asking it questions, what is the advantage of combining a DPP-4 inhibitor with a GLP-1 RA? And it came up with a kind of an answer that, they can complement each other, they can improve glycemic control. So around 5 minutes of chatting with ChatGPT, and finally it said, okay, fine, I'm sorry about the confusion. The two drugs have similar mechanisms of action and there won't be much value. So I think for it to really revolutionize our knowledge in that aspect, one, it needs to have real-time internet access and it needs to be updated regularly. So I think that would answer. And factual errors have to be reduced by, that would probably happen if it has real-time internet access.
I think wonderfully said. Because if you look at AI in medicine itself, it is purely a tool, and it is how we use it. And like Dr. Gagan Priya said, we have to be careful while using it. And you might just, if you put GLP-1 and DPP-4 together, and if it is not a medical person reading it, that person would think, oh, this is a great combination. And you can see that our audience does not use ChatGPT in their routine clinical practice. They answer to question number 1. Second is, let's have the answer to question number 2 also. While we are waiting for that answer, may I ask Dr. Nalini,
Yes.
do you use ChatGPT in your practice? And how do you use it for telemedicine, or do you use it for any doctor-patient interactions? If so, how do you use that?
That's a very interesting question, sir. So, and a very important one too. As of now, personally, I don't use it for my clinical practice. Maybe as Dr. Gagan has said, rightly outside my area of expertise, if I have a doubt and I have to clear that, maybe I'd use that in that context, but I wouldn't explore it for medical reasons because of the lack of referencing that is there. And it cannot access the important authentic journals which we actually read. So that is the main limitation. Coming to telemedicine, I would say ChatGPT would be really helpful because the patient is in some far corner of the country and you're talking to that patient. So ChatGPT can be your virtual assistant. It can help you give relevant answers to the myriad questions which patients ask. So virtual assistant wise, it can also summarize what the patient is asking. I think we have the poll result here.
Yes, Dr. Nalini, what do you think about this poll result? Many people believe that it can actually improve patient outcomes. Isn't that expecting a little too much from ChatGPT?
Yes, especially when only 11% use it and 83% expect from it. That means they don't know about it and they really are expecting answers from it. So in reality, very few people use. Today, I had a poll with a lot of non-doctor individuals who are into IT. And I asked them a question if they use ChatGPT for clarifying their medical doubts. Their responses were, does it include Google search also? But very, very few of them. In fact, 80 people answered that poll out there and only 2 people you asked ChatGPT for medical queries. So even among internet savvy people, IT technical people, they are the core IT people, they do not use ChatGPT for any form of education. Well, one of the important things about ChatGPT is patient education as well. As I was telling you, in telemedicine, when a patient is sitting in some far corner and they have a lot of doubts, and you need to provide the information for all those doubts, so that you can give them a link and say, search this keyword and you will get this answer. You have to provide the keyword and what the patient needs to search for ChatGPT to come up with correct answers. So correct guidance is essential when the patient has to search for it, because the prompt which we give defines the result. So if the prompt is correct, the answer will be correct. So the doctor has to give it. So ChatGPT can be a good assistant, but it cannot replace the doctor. So there are 2 things that you've said. Telemedicine, what else does it do? It can incorporate into our wearable devices. When ChatGPT can be incorporated, when it is incorporated into a wearable devices, it can monitor the blood sugars. It can prompt the patient. It can give the patient a feedback. That's a very, very powerful application of it. When we talk about Internet of Things are all the things which are connected in the web, that is the internet. They all communicate with each other, can potentially communicate. And ChatGPT is the one which can integrate them and give them a very good feedback about how they are doing. Or medications. The forgetful patients who are there, old patients. So ChatGPT can give them reminders also and say your medication is due at this time, you need to take it this time. So that's another important thing. And naturally, ChatGPT is a language translator, I would say. It's a processing unit, an AI processing thing. So it can convert from one language to another language, and we can efficiently communicate with our patients. So that issue is a lot there in our country, because many times I stumble upon a patient who speaks only Tamil. And if I am very bad with Tamil, so I can use ChatGPT's help to overcome this issue, and the patient will be happy and I'll be happy because I could do something for the patient. So it is very important. And one very strange thing that I have understood about ChatGPT, apart from all these things, is this AI provides emotional support. I have myself put in a query, a made up query saying that I cannot get over the loss of my parent and it's been 5 years. What should I do? It gave an absolutely empathetic response and said that I didn't have to deal with it alone and I can take help and therapy if needed. But grief doesn't have a timeline, so I shouldn't quantify it. That's as well as anybody has spoken to me. So it gives very well some emotional support as well. And it is something of a lot of value and accessibility and convenience, especially for those patients sitting in the remote corner of the country. When we say all these things are good, patient privacy, we don't know. Patient data, we don't know about. How ethical is it to use it all the while? We still are in a dilemma about it. I hope that helps.
I completely agree. One of the areas where, when we are talking about ChatGPT, we are not going to restrict ourselves only to ChatGPT. We'll talk about the larger issue of AI. And then Google itself has got its own AI machine called Google Bard. And you have Google Translate. I think India has many languages. You have Marathi, Malayalam, Tamil, Punjabi, Telugu.
540 languages, sir.
So many languages. How many languages?
540.
540 languages. So I personally, we may be very good in speaking English, but we may not be so good in writing English. We may be okay, and I may be okay in speaking Hindi, lekin wo likhna, that's a different thing, to write it. So many times I've used ChatGPT to translate something what I want to say in English into chaste Hindi or even to chaste Malayalam, because I am a Malayali, but I can't read and write Malayalam because I grew up in different parts of India. My own mother tongue is, so to say, Hindi and English. So, but the fact is that I can just about read the basics of Malayalam and I can read Hindi very well. So I still have to read it before I send it across, because you don't know how good the translation is. And sometimes you can have a mix-up of words which may mean even some completely different things. For example, if you ask ChatGPT if a patient were to ask ChatGPT, what are the various components, various types of testosterone available in the market? Well, so because people do Google testosterone, they want to put on muscle and they go to the gym, and instead of sustanon, if they read sustain, which is progesterone, or they read it as sustain, they are in trouble. Many years ago, I had a patient who was prescribed sustanon by a doctor. The patient went to the pharmacist at the medical shop, and the pharmacist gave the patient sustain. And the patient was taking sustain injections, which is progesterone injections, instead of testosterone injections. And you can imagine the opposite thing happened. He had gynecomastia, all sorts of things he had. So we have to be really careful what ChatGPT gives, and we have to read what ChatGPT gives before sending it across to the patient. In telemedicine and even other situations, if you are a quick typer, while you're discussing with patient and the patient asks a complicated question, and you want to answer, but you want to get your flow of thoughts right. For example, patient asks, what is the difference between analog insulin and ordinary insulin? You can just type it into ChatGPT while you're talking to the patient. You'll get 3-4 points there, because we may not be able to immediately tell the patient all the points. Then you can look at those points and convey to the patient, okay, there's less hypoglycemia with analogs, the weight gain may be less, it's more physiological, things like that. So I think ChatGPT has to be used, but there has to be oversight every time we use it. And Google Bard and ChatGPT, these things are going to come in, and that's going to, and very interestingly, Dr. Nalini talked about empathy. So when you ask ChatGPT, for example, that, it's a very difficult day, I've come back from work, I'm tired, I'm feeling depressed, I'm sad, ChatGPT will say, okay, you go take a walk, go for a exercise, you'll feel better. Exercise releases hormones. The ChatGPT's or any AI is just giving you a set of programmed answers. It's not empathetic. It's not realizing, or it's not reaching out to you, but it's giving you programmed answers. So I looked up artificial empathy, and I indeed found that they are experimenting with artificial empathy in many countries, including Japan, where there is a huge geriatric population. They need robots to take care of them. And they have artificial empathy coming in a big way, where the AI itself is not simply giving a programmed reply. It is actually empathetic. I don't know if I can even imagine that happening. Isn't there a Hindi movie on this coming soon? I saw the trailer in one of the theaters. Yes, Dr. Gagan Priya.
Yeah. So I just wanted to come in this. So, the chat GPT is training itself. It's different from what we had with Alexa and Siri, wherein the response was programmed. So they were decision trees that they were following. Chat GPT trains itself. So like with Nalini, I agree that the empathy level is definitely higher. In fact, I put in one of my own poems and asked it to critique the poem. And when I loved the answer, there were a lot of positives. There were some points that you could improve on. And then I said, give me an alternative. So it gave me an alternative version of the same poem. When I said, okay, no, I like the original better, it was like, yeah, the original is always better. So it was like a human-like response. I wouldn't say it's human response.
So I think there's a lot of ethical issues that come into this. And maybe Dr. Nitin, your views on ethical issues when AI chatbots are going to be used in patient communication. What are the things to look at? But I agree with Dr. Gagan Priya. Amazing, when you put in your poem, when you put in things, you get a lot of responses. And actually, whatever we type, it's going to get better and better with time. That's how the chat GPT works. So your views, Nitin, on
Absolutely. So
ethics?
just adding to what Dr. Gagan said, and the first time when I used ChatGPT was in a little crisis situation. I had downloaded it but not used it. But then there was this day that suddenly I had to be chief guest because the main chief guest was not coming, and I was told 1 hour before that you have to come on stage and give a speech instead of the chief guest. So I had to prepare something relevant to that audience, which was absolutely unprepared. I put it in ChatGPT, give me a 10-minute speech, and I got a fantastic speech. And I was like, okay, save my day. But I think there are ethical issues, which indeed is the main concern at this point within the medical community. And if I have to classify, I would say there are three broad domains of ethical concerns that we have to deal with when we are talking of ChatGPT and the AI world in general. And I think the first and the most important one would be in terms of the safety and efficacy, or safety and accuracy of these algorithms. Just the two examples that both of you spoke about, Dr. Unisa, you said about sustain and sustain. And just if there is a big harm to the patient, just because there is a mix-up of drugs, I think we all as doctors have learned the first thing that we don't have to do harm to the patient. So if that itself is breached, then it becomes really, really difficult. So definitely safety is first. And even the example that Dr. Gagan gave, GLP and gliptins, if the patient is just looking at that and starts to consume, especially in a country like ours where we don't have regulated pharmaceutical drugs, anybody can get anything from the pharmacy. So then definitely that is the first ethical concern, that is the safety and the accuracy of the response, especially when you're talking about patient care. I think the second important ethical issue that we have to deal with is with regard to the privacy and the data governance that is there. Now, there's a lot of patient data. Who owns it? Who can see it? What somebody is doing with it? Many times, even on social media, if you're just browsing something and the next ad in our Facebook would be that particular thing. And we don't even know how we are lured into this entire AI world where things are, capturing our browsing capability or where we are going. We don't even know what all we've accepted as to data that we are losing out. So I think that is the second other concern that has to be very carefully dealt with, the privacy and data governance. And the third important ethical issue is about authorship and accountability. Now, something goes wrong and you've used in ChatGPT kind of thing to follow that, it is still your responsibility. There's nobody in ChatGPT is going to be put in jail or is going to be put in court of law. So I think these are the three broad domains that I would classify all the ethical issues: the safety, accuracy, the privacy and data governance, and authorship and accountability. And though while going through literature, I do realize that this ChatGPT is right now in accordance with the European Union AI ethical guidelines as they stand. But I think we as doctors should look at these three domains critically before we say, yes, that this is all good.
So I completely agree. There are a lot of ethical issues, especially like Dr. Gagan was mentioning, it will take everything from the open domain. And Dr. Nalini and Dr. Nitin mentioned that, we have ethical issues of the content. So I read long time back where somebody wanted to write an article and an entire, because some universities have their thesis in the public domain, their PhD thesis and other thesis. The ChatGPT copied content from somebody's thesis verbatim and put it there. I don't know if it was ChatGPT or some other AI tool, but the entire thing was copied. So I think we have to be very careful. But at the same time, I think where ChatGPT can help is to take the drudgery out of work. The hard work and the menial and the terrible work that you have no choice but to sit and do. For example, yesterday I was writing an article. I was trying to review some content. And all my articles, all my references were not in Vancouver format. They were in Harvard format, in which, you have the authors are listed by their names in alphabetical order. I wanted to convert them into Vancouver format, and I wanted to put it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as they are appearing in the text. So I just copied and pasted my entire article into ChatGPT. And then I told ChatGPT that please convert these references into Vancouver format and cite them as they are in the text. So there were 12 references. ChatGPT converted everything to Vancouver format perfectly. I checked all of them. But the order of references, only 8 out of 12 were in the correct order. After the 8th one, the order got mixed up, despite the names of the author clearly being there. So somebody has to relook at it, but 80% of the work, like somebody you have an assistant doing it for you will do it. Then you just have to correct the rest. But that is probably how to use it. But somebody who has got a capability now, I'm wondering that if somebody asks for the same topic, will ChatGPT take my article and give it to somebody else? Well, that's all possible because you are playing on with AI. But I suppose we just, like many things, we just hope it doesn't happen. We do a lot of things in life, hoping that even when we cross the road, we hope that somebody is not drunk driving and hits you. So I think that sort of thing we can never predict. But yes, so Dr. Gagan, in your view, what areas of medicine can ChatGPT make impact and why? And the wider role of AI in medicine, how do you see it unfolding?
So I think, there are some areas where artificial intelligence is already working. I mean, very close to endocrinology, we have bone age calculators, which are AI driven and which have made our job much simpler. I mean, sitting with a GP atlas and calculating the bone age is actually quite tedious. But if you have an automated calculator which uses both the image processing and AI to give you the bone age, that's beauty. I think radiology is one field where such kind of, not ChatGPT per se, but an AI algorithm with machine learning will work. Opthal also, in fact, there's a lot of research with fundus cameras, and they are in practice in a lot of places, remote areas where they use those fundus images, they process them with machine learning, and then which patients are to be referred, what is the staging of retinopathy. So that's kind of there. Same goes for pathology images also, I think. So these are non-clinical kind of areas where AI can really help. Within the clinical practice, I think primary healthcare is somewhere where ChatGPT has a real potential, because primary healthcare is looking at everything, and very often they might end up, thinking of the wrong kind of disease process and sending to the wrong specialist. So we do get all of those weird referrals where the patient should have gone to neurology and has come to me. So maybe in kind of channeling the patients, getting the basic investigations without burdening the PCP, to get to know everything in the world, it could be a useful tool. triaging of patients in ER with very little time, like Dr. Nitin said, within a matter of seconds, he had his speech ready. So it could, but yes, there will be a lot of learning of these processes and streamlining of these pathways in this. When it comes to our practice, I feel it has potential in creating virtual assistants for patients, in scheduling appointments for one. It can become very easy, answering simple queries like something like, what is the best diet? People will come back and ask you, or pick up the phone and ask you in the middle of the night, can I have a banana? So that's something ChatGPT can take care of. But having said that, like you said, there can be errors. What I learned over the last 3 or 4 days was it auto learns by itself. So 3 or 4 days back, I just asked it, okay, tell me a fun fact about Mohali, the city I live in. So it said, okay, it has the Punjab Cricket Stadium. So I said, okay, tell me one more fun fact. It said, there is an infinity phase. I said, I don't know of an infinity phase. Where is it? So then it corrected itself. And for the next 3 days, it never mentioned the infinity phase. And if I specifically asked it, it said there is none. So I think it auto learns, but we have to streamline its use for ourselves. So you're muted right now.
Only sir, we cannot.
So-
You're moved. Yeah.
Very interesting point that, you can get some information from it, but like the infinity you mentioned, it may not be completely accurate. So you have to always guide it and look at it. And I also like your point about triage, triaging patients. But really, I'm wondering, Dr. Nalini, maybe in emergency or time-sensitive situations, not just for doctors, but also patients. For example, if a patient collapses and there's only an intern there who's maybe passed the final MBBS exam last week and is now just, right in the middle, and patient has collapsed, and you have only ChatGPT till the senior resident comes in. Can ChatGPT help in these kind of time-sensitive situations? Even can patients use? How reliable and accurate is it in diagnosing and suggesting treatments?
I would say it's a dangerous question, first thing.
Yeah, so
I
it's a
would
dangerous
advise
thing.
people not to use ChatGPT at that moment, but remember the ABC of the emergency to the junior resident. But then I would say in a time-sensitive situation, it can give quick access to information when no other guidance is available. So probably the junior resident who is in dire need of some guidance towards the symptoms, to what he is looking at, he or she is looking at, that guidance is important at that moment. And it can help him in potential diagnosis and averting a dangerous outcome. So that may be helpful, but having said that, I would say what we put into ChatGPT is very, very important. As Dr. Gagan was just now saying, if her questions are very, very particular and properly phrased, then ChatGPT will give a correct answer, and it auto learns from its mistakes. So definitely there are mistakes and errors that are happening in a life-threatening situation, in an emergency. How correct is to take ChatGPT's help? That remains an ethical question. So the input prompt is important. Accuracy depends on what we give and what it has learned till then. And also, it cannot physically examine the patients. So eyes, ears, fingers, every other sense is that of the junior resident that is there out there. So if mind doesn't know, eyes don't see it, and the junior resident might miss a very key point. So he might be totally off track. That will be a disaster in the time sensitive situation. So definitely it has to be under a proper guidance, a proper prompt. Routine situation, if a lay person is there and a person has collapsed, ideally they should be trained in CPR. And if not, ChatGPT is the only solace for them, then only way of getting the situation out, then they should ask a proper question and probably do accordingly. But be very, very careful having said this.
Yeah, I don't think that in a very emergency or time-sensitive situation, we can depend on ChatGPT, because the time taken to answer is the time taken to call somebody for help. Well, if you're in the middle of the desert or in the middle of somewhere, but you still have internet, difficult to imagine, but if you still have internet and if you're in a remote place and something has happened and you have no clue, even then it will be very, very tricky unless you also ask ChatGPT to look for a quick reference. Okay, I want to know the dose of this drug, but give me the dose of the drug along with the reference of that. Then you check the reference, cross-check, and then only you can give the dose, because ChatGPT may add another 0 or 2 zeros, which actually even humans can make that kind of mistake. Yes, Dr. Gagan.
Yeah, so in that regard, actually, it does not give you the source of its information
Oh.
because it's not connected to real-time internet. It does not have access to journals. So it does not tell you what the source of that information is. And errors have happened, major errors. So I said, okay, what if I take a 40-unit syringe and I use a 100-unit vial? How much am I injecting if I draw till 10? It said you're drawing 10 units. So it took me around 15 minutes to convince it that it's not 10, I'm drawing 25 units. So those errors actually can be there, and the source is not mentioned, the reference is not mentioned.
To agree with that, I had specifically asked for the reference for a particular thing. I was testing this, and then it refused. It says, I cannot give you the reference.
Okay, in very early days, I've also tested this. And can you give me reference for a particular diet or something like that? It gave me 10 references, and I checked all the 10 were created references. There was no publication like that in PubMed or anywhere else. It was a completely created reference. So instead of retrieving the reference, ChatGPT made the reference, because you only asked it to give the reference. You did not ask it to retrieve any references. So ChatGPT made some reference and gave you. That's all they did. So sometimes, as you said, in the prompts that we asked, the exact question, Dr. Nitin, you want to come in? You have your views?
No, yeah, just wanted to add that, when we were residents or we were interns or junior doctors in the emergency, we used to carry around a book like a Washington manual or something. When first time exposed to emergencies all alone, I was in RML hospital in Delhi, which was like flooded with emergency all 24/7. And I would just open that book and see, okay, let me read about it before I just address it. In the semi-emergency situation, obviously there are frontline doctors and senior doctors to support. I think that's where this could be a faster version of a manual that may be helpful. But again, accuracy has to be checked.
Yeah, and Nitin, your views on data privacy, and can doctors, if they put in information, can they be sure that, for example, by mistake, if a doctor puts in the patient's name in the ChatGPT, and can we be sure that that's completely safe?
I would never be sure. And I think for this thing, we cannot even say that we hope we are sure. I think this is a serious matter. And so I think when we as doctors are putting in patient-related information, it has to be coded. Like in research, when we have a patient that we have to share patient data, it is coded and only the PI would have, this code is for this particular patient. But anybody else is just looking at those codes and doesn't really know who exactly that person is. So it's like de-identified data. I think as a physician, I have to know that. I have to only enter that data, and obviously add a second tier of kind of protection, like who has the ability to access the data. It should be password coded and that. So first and foremost, even if the access breach is breached, then it should be de-identified data that is there. So definitely the privacy concern is going to be there. So we shouldn't put data which is directly related to a patient.
I completely agree. Some people put up content on the internet, Twitter, Facebook, of patients' X-ray, patients' ECG. I've seen even tools like ChatGPT and Google Bard, people uploading CGM, continuous glucose monitoring graphs, and getting a report from that, an ECG. I think it is very naive to assume that even if the patient's name is not there, the tools cannot detect the original patient's details. Because today technology is so advanced, and even if the patient data is encrypted in the background in a different layer, somebody can actually retrieve that data. So unless you have patient consent specifically to use it, do not put any X-ray or ECG or any information about the patient on any public domain, including ChatGPT, because it can also be a legal issue. It can be, even if the patient's name is not there, there are now ways and tools just to figure out which country it is from or which place it is from, and the tools are so advanced that they may even be able to identify the patient. So unless you have patient permission, do not put up any reports or any data of the patient, even if the name is not there. Don't put it up on the net. So at that point, let me ask Dr. Gagan to come in and now AI is losing a lot of information. Should we have any regulations on it, and are there any regulation at all? Is the IMA or anybody, you know, any society is telling use ChatGPT or Google Bard or don't use it? Any regulation, and do we need it? And what sort of regulation would you look at?
So one, I think regulation is mandatory. That's no questions asked. There are ethical issues, there are privacy issues, there are accuracy issues to begin with. Like the accuracy of the entire system will depend on what data it is fed, and the data is all the textual data that's available online. As of now, it's the data that was available till January 22. So it's not updated. That's one thing. If it does not have access to medical journals and actual hardcore and medical data, then I think that the question about accuracy comes, because what it's extrapolating is from whatever is already there in the public domain. So again, that becomes an issue. When it comes to, I think, India, I could not come across any such regulatory authority creating a framework. In US, FDA and in Europe, EMA do have some frameworks for medical devices that use AI. So they have established frameworks for our CGM and the closed loop systems, wherein AI is being used of a fundus photograph imaging or auto image processing in radiology, wherein they have to meet those established standards before AI can be implemented. It's absolutely essential. As of now, we are not there yet.
I completely agree. I think this meeting is more about where not to use ChatGPT and then where to use ChatGPT. And there are many, well, I'm on the fence, but there are many of my very closest friends who are actually very, very pro ChatGPT people. And I'm sure that they will completely disagree, but I am in complete agreement with you that using AI comes at a risk. Now, talking about students. Now, I heard that, you know, school children are like writing their entire essays on ChatGPT. If teacher tells them to write an essay on New Delhi or Independence Day or any other thing, they just feed it and they get an essay out. What if all our doctors also start doing that? Is ChatGPT going to be used in medical education and training by teachers, by students? What's going to happen now? How will we know what is now true, what is not true?
That's a very, very, I would say, risky question to answer, especially for students. It's not meant for you. So there are pros and cons. Yes, students are doing it. My children have experimented with it, but they do not have gadgets so often with them, so they don't do it. They do it the hard way. It's a potential way of getting information easily. As you mentioned earlier, Dr. Oli, it removes the drudgery of searching for where they want to read, what they want to read. But the prompts have to be correct. Having said that, it can simulate a doctor-patient relationship and it can tell the students, medical students, how to study. It can give a hypothetical case-based scenario and question and train the medical students. We can use it. I would say professors can guide, just like how we have a human oversight when we use it as a doctor. As a professor, one needs to have that oversight and then use it appropriately so that case-based scenarios are posed, questions are posed, challenges are posed, which only an AI system can retrieve and give it to the students. So that is the beauty of artificial intelligence system. It removes that difficulty of searching for a case. If there is no case which can challenge the patient, which challenge the students at that moment, then you can always ask for a hypothetical case from ChatGPT and give a test and then see how your students have performed. So that is one very good way of learning. But having said that, accuracy depends on the prompt. Again and again, I say this because the other day I read the complete ACSM guidelines of 2022 and I wanted to test it on ChatGPT. So I asked it vaguely. It refused to give me the exact question without the mention of ACSM. So when I asked it, what does ACSM in 2022 say about this particular aspect? It came up with the exact guidelines, verbatim, exactly word to word, which was mentioned in the ACSM guidelines. So when we ask it vaguely, it cannot understand it. But when we want what we want, when we know that, we need to give the prompt well, and it is going to give us proper information. So professors can use it to challenge the students and give them a more informative perspective and more challenges in scenarios. But having said that, the limitations, there is no contextual learning for ChatGPT. The lack of contextual understanding is missing in ChatGPT. It doesn't have that situational understanding. It lacks accuracy. We so many times said this. It lacks reliability as well. 8 of your references were correct, but what about the 4? What if that particular student is doing his or her entire thesis on ChatGPT and then doesn't look at it? Entire thesis work goes in vain. Right? So that human side is important. Over reliance again on technology. Are we missing the human touch? Are we asking too much? Is it drudgery essential to understand the importance of medical education? Somewhere that hard work probably is important and not just over reliance on gadgets and technology.
Well, 2 points. One is that, I read about a teacher who was continuously fed up with her school children using ChatGPT, that finally she told them that here is an essay. You have to submit 2 answers. One is your own answer. One is the AI-based essay. And the third is you have to compare between your answer and the AI-based answer and tell what are the differences. So that's the only way, and she insisted on the 3. And the children came up and she said the children actually improved. In other words, if you are already doing the work yourself, and if you have got another tool to just guide you if everything is okay, then it's I suppose it's one way to get on with things rather than, we have to accept sometimes. Second is, now I know that Dr. Nitin is here, Dr. Gagan is here, Dr. Nalini is here, but do I know that you are here? Who says you are here? It could be a bot. So interestingly, I was seeing a demonstration of a HR interview software where the interviewer is interviewing a candidate on a virtual platform. So that's a very sophisticated software which helps people to conduct interviews online. So along with that, they have a tool called lip sync preventer to prevent lip syncing. So why lip syncing? So it seems that many of the interviews, actually the candidate sitting here, the face may be the same person, but the sound is coming from somebody else. So imagine you are doing a Viva on Zoom, you are conducting an exam, and the candidate is being interviewed on the other side, or that candidate is applying for a grant and you are assessing, and many of the research grant meetings are all held online and they are asking you questions. So I may be sitting here, but I may have shared my screen remotely with somebody in the next room. The audio I may have connected to that person's computer. That person may be speaking and I may be doing something like this. That sound is somebody else's. So that it has come to that we don't even know tomorrow if somebody else can mimic the technology. And later on, if you make an avatar of yourself, if Dr. Gagan has an avatar, Nitin has an avatar, I have an avatar, we can say, okay, just imagine that all of you are talking and I can go and watch some movie or something, and then people can be talking, and the audience also may be saying, okay, half of I want to sit here, but I want to sit in my clinic doing a telemedicine consultation. So let one avatar sit in the telemedicine, or I'll sit in the clinic, let my avatar listen to this and record it and come back, and let my avatar ask exactly the same questions that I would have asked. So the boundaries are limitless for all this. We keep on thinking there is nothing we can do about all this, but at least there are some truths which can emerge. And here is my next question to Dr. Nitin. I think it's one of the final questions before we have the next session. What are the future of all this? Where are we headed now? Where is humanity headed? Where is medicine headed? Where are these technologies going to take us in healthcare in the next decade? Your thoughts?
Absolutely. And I think in a single word, the answer is it's limitless, as you said. But just focusing on healthcare and medicine, I think the 3 broad areas where AI, if we look at in future, could be in terms of education, could be in terms of patient care, could be in terms of research. Education, Dr. Nalini has just spoken about. But focusing on patient care, I would say that, if we look at the good side, and if we are looking at AI helping us, so integrating into real world clinical practice would be a way of the future. At least as physician assistants or as diabetes educators. I was involved with a trial in Australia called the My Diabetes Coach Trial, where there's an avatar on the phone and again AI based, but that avatar is like a 24/7 diabetes educator with the patient. She would be connected to the pump, will know the glucose values, know what the patient is eating, will give periodic reminders, okay, you've not gone for your walk, it's time, whatever. So that kind of a thing, a personalized diabetes educator kind of a thing, or a physician assistant could be a way forward. Another way forward could be definitely having, again, the other trial that's coming to my mind is one which Professor Nikhil Tandon from AIIMS is involved, the Empower trial, where again, AI-based algorithms are given at the primary care level, and the treatment algorithm is formed and the final prescription is formed, and the doctor has to look at it and approve it or change it. So again, at the primary care, as was mentioned earlier by Dr. Gagan, I think this is something that may be helpful where the high-end expertise is not available, and the AI can assist the physician. And the ultimate call is definitely of the doctor, whether that prescription should go on. But I think that's another way in which the patient care can be improved in areas where we don't have expert advice. But I think overall, all the ethical issues have to be kept in mind. But as you said, it is a limitless kind of an outreach that we're looking at for this in future.
Well, I think we have 10 minutes more, and I'm supposed to sum up. So I'd like to say there are a couple of doomsday predictions about AI. One is by this famous author called Yuval Harari, who writes books on futurists. He says that tomorrow humanity is going to be replaced by droids, which means human beings with, say, artificial hands or artificial brains. Or we may be replaced by completely artificial people. Or we may be replaced by genetically superhumans. And that is when AI reaches a point called the point of singularity, where AI is going to overtake the human race. That is the point of singularity. At that point, when AI overtakes the human race, then AI will treat ordinary people like you and me, just like we may treat a mosquito on our shoulder. They may just say, okay, we don't want human beings because we are superhumans. And I think there is a superb attendance to this meeting. It's again a record attendance. We have 2,080 logins. So the second doomsday project, so this is one of the highest for this meeting, and that's how doctors are interested. So that's one, doomsday prediction that AI will take over the world. Second doomsday prediction is that AI will take over our jobs, doctors' jobs. Well, our jobs are unlikely to be taken over because it requires a human touch. Anything requiring a human touch is very difficult. It's not impossible, difficult. But certain jobs which do not require a human touch, like radiology, histology, these jobs are at very high risk of being taken over by AI using deep learning. So that point will happen when AI does what is called deep learning. It learns to teach and it learns by itself. But at the same time, I want to conclude by exactly what Dr. Nitin said and Dr. Nalini and Dr. Gagan said, that we have to supervise AI. A good clinician with access to AI for complex decision making is better than a good clinician who does not even know what AI is. So that way, having that is good. Second is, in future, we may be having to document things more and more. You may have to write a letter thanking a doctor for referring a patient. You may have to write a letter inviting doctors for a conference. You may have to write a letter rejecting an article, or you may have to write a particular letter, and there may be a lot of, or if you are an employer, you may have to write a letter hiring somebody, or you may have to hire. So these kind of letters, which are very difficult and lengthy to write, you can get AI to just write the template for you, so that you don't have to hire a secretary for doing that. So these kind of things which require drudgery, sitting and doing, it can do it for you. It can write a letter. You may be invited to a meeting and you may have to say no, but you want to say it politely. You can tell AI to write ChatGPT to write a nice letter. And I have also done what Nitin has done. So I will write, I am an endocrinologist and I have to give a speech to a set of people who are working in a bank about the basics of diabetes, and also thanking the manager for inviting me. How will I go about the speech? The speech is in an auditorium at 6 p.m. and it is in a place where there is a lot of traffic, so I have to mention something about the traffic. So it'll give you a nice letter depending on the prompt you give. So use it with a good prompt. I have also used it for preparing speeches which are to non-medical people. Because medical people we can speak, but to non-medical people it's very difficult. So I've used it to prepare these kind of inauguration speeches, and I think use it as a tool with good oversight. And it's not the end of the world. Robots are not taking over the world. They're not taking over clinicians' jobs. We have to use AI rather than letting AI use us. On that note, let me go to the next part, which is the last 4 minutes, in which I ask about something. We have been talking grand about AI and cloud and the stars and all that. Now we are talking about the patient sitting in front of us. The first question again to Dr. Gagan Priya. Now, sulfonylurea and metformin, we are now down to ordinary routine treatment for our patients, and the most common treatment is sulfonylurea metformin. And there's no AI involved here. It is patient is sitting in front of us. With so many other drugs, like expensive drugs which have now become less expensive. And where are you looking at these sulfonylurea metformin? Are they going to stand the test of time? Your views, Dr. Gagan Priya?
So I think, yes, sulfonylureas, by and large, we can say they have stood the test of time. About 10 years back, I was in a debate and the topic I was speaking for was, is it time to bid farewell to sulfonylureas? I made this whole case about TPP4 SGLT2, and my competitor came up and said, कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी, सदियों रहा है दुश्मन सारा जहां हमारा. I mean, that stands true even today. Yes, the older sulfonylureas had a problem. There was a greater risk of hypoglycemia. There were concerns about cardiovascular safety. But when we talk of the modern SUs like glyclazide, especially in the modified extended release forms, or glimepiride, they have sufficient data of reasonable safety compared to even the modern drugs, and also the cardiovascular safety. Glimepiride versus linagliptin did go into a head-on-head trial, and some of us often ended up concluding it was a trial for glimepiride and not for linagliptin. But the efficacy was good, the safety was good. There was a slightly higher risk of hypoglycemia and a slightly greater weight gain. CV safety was equivalent. Take it with a pinch of salt, of course, that patients who are at high risk of hypoglycemia, we have to be cautious. Extremes of age, again, to be cautious. But they will stand the test of time. Going forward also, there'll be always a section of patients which need sulfonylurea.
I think, thank you for that answer. I think they have robust drugs standing the test of time. We have decades of experience. Your thoughts, Dr. Nalini, on sulfonylureas and metformin?
I would totally agree with Dr. Gagan and you that they have stood the test of time. Precisely, I would say about 30 years for glimepiride and more than 65 years for metformin. Which other drug has stood such strong test of time? None of them. They are cornerstones in the treatment of type 2 diabetes, and they've been here. Of course, there are recent advancements. We need to choose the patient properly. We need to select the patient properly and give the patient the drug that the patient needs, prefers, and can also afford. And that is the place where sulfonylureas and metformin score a lot. They are very they're quite affordable medications, and we use them. Yes, I think all of us use them. So these newer medications are options. Yes, good options, but sulfonylureas are not going anywhere, and metformin is definitely not going anywhere.
So wonderfully said. One, increasing insulin secretion, one, improving insulin sensitivity. Dr. Nitin, I remember, I think in 1999, when I was a lecturer in endocrine in Vellore, sulfonylurea, metformin, that was the mainstay of treatment. In fact, during my MD, it was Dr. Alka Ganesh. She was my thesis guide in MD in Vellore, and I used to sit in the diabetes clinic, and my MD thesis was on that. And these were common drugs. Of course, my thesis was on insulin. What is your view on these drugs? Are they going to stay and continue to be there, or what is your view?
I would completely agree with what has been said. I think the two main factors are definitely the efficacy of these drugs. One small dose of glimepiride, and you see how the glucose values crash. And then second is the affordability, especially in our context in India. No matter what new drugs come in, at the end of the day, these are not antibiotics or drugs that have to be taken for 5 days, 10 days. These are long-term medications. So definitely you have to look at the pocket of the patient, and these drugs are easily available across the remotest of cities in India. So they're here to stay. They've stood the test of time already. They've proved themselves old as gold, and that's what I would say.
So old as gold, I'm reminded of Amitabh Bachchan, because they said that, long time back, they said that Amitabh Bachchan should retire. His movies are flopping. He came back with KBC. And after KBC, he came back with more movies. Now again and again more movies. He's now tweeting. His tweets are run into thousands. And now he was recently in one season of KBC, where he again bid farewell, a very emotional farewell. But I think he'll be back in the next season. So sulfonylureas, right from last 20 years, we have been hearing debates on sulfonylureas should be retired, they should be retired, metformin should be retired. They've never retired, and doctors are continuing to use them because they are useful and they are helping our patients. They have robust glucose control and they work very, very well. And just like KBC, this is also not a small season. 2080 doctors attending at 9 o'clock in the evening is a huge thing. So before I bid them Shubh Ratri, I have nobody like Amitabh Bachchan. I'll probably retire unlike Amitabh Bachchan. I think even then he will be practicing and acting in movies those days. But really wonderful to have such excellent oratory skills on display. Dr. Nitin, Dr. Gagan, Dr. Nalini. It was wonderful having spectacular speakers like you. And over to Dr. Aushli for the final comments, and thank you USP, the organizers, for this successful series which is running forever now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Unnikrishnan, sir. It was indeed a very engaging session. I'm really running short of words. First of all, I would like to start by thanking Dr. Unnikrishnan, sir, for being such an amiable and charismatic course mentor for us, as always, sir. Thank you for giving a valuable time and for the summing up so well and for the excellently used analogies, sir. Thank you for our expert panel, Dr. Nalini ma'am, Dr. Nitin sir, and Dr. Gagan Priya ma'am, for making the session so captivating. Thank you for making us pin down all those pragmatic approaches. And yes, we had more than 2,000 logins. So thank you, delegates, for joining. And last but not the least, I would like to thank my team USV and our digital team. Without the support, this wouldn't have been possible. So thank you, everybody, and have a great night ahead.
Thank you and Shubh Ratri.
Thank you.